So Gwyneth MacMaster and Bryan Dalton talking about the Sustainable Research Initiative. It's not a university initiative, but a more self-motivated initiative that may roll out to a more wider potential audience. Gwyneth's in the School of Biology and Environmental Science and bioplastic. Yeah, so in Bryan's case, he gave a really good, actually I got a really good walk around from Bryan and Gwyneth there a few weeks ago. So I'll hand over. Unfortunately, I have to head off, but Katrina and Liz will look after the events here.
Yes. I take this one.
Yeah. So you don't have a, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi everyone, this is very weird. The last time I did one of these, I was not holding this. There was a lot of coffee and there was no screens, but that's a long time ago. So what we're here today to talk about is the UCD Sustainable Research Initiative. And I'm going to try and use a clicker. That worked. Good start. Okay, so just a little bit of background, just give a little bit of background on this, and then Bryan's going to take over and kind of showcase what is actually being done within the Earth Institute itself at the moment. So we are a group of staff and students who've come together because we want to work in a more environmentally sustainable way, and we want to bring that through to how we do our research. So this group was formed about 2021, 2022. It's chaired by Mary Sakaya, who's sitting there in the middle, looking innocuous, and it's cross-disciplinary. So it ranges from traditional wet labs to field-based research, to computational research, to clinical research, and everything in between. And it is great that we have, since we've had the new VP for Sustainability and the Sustainability Officer, that we've worked a lot with those. Now, I always go to do that. Right, so why should we make our research more sustainable? So for this talk, I'm just going to kind of focus mostly on kind of wet lab stuff, because that's kind of where our focus to date has been. So managing research sustainably means we're managing research more efficiently. So for example, if you can turn down your -80 freezers to -70, you're actually saving the life on your compressor and you're saving your equipment for longer use. It's also possibly going to be an integral part of funding requirements going forward. So for example, SFI have recently become very interested in this, and they've come out to UCD to meet people. So I met Emer and Mary, and I know Sinead is working with them as well, to have a look at accreditation. And they've recently rolled out a sponsorship program where they have sponsored SFI funded labs to apply for this My Green Lab certification, and Bryan's going to talk more about that. So obviously, why do we need sustainability within labs? They're very resource intensive areas. They use about 10 times more energy than office space, about 4 times more water. And according to My Green Labs, from their baseline calculations, about 5.5 million metric tons of plastic waste from single-use plastics are produced every year. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about the road so far. So what we have done, and we have organised a mini symposium last year for the Green Week. And we had speakers from clinical research, we had speakers from estates, we had speakers from Lions. We've presented to the college management teams in the College of Health and Agricultural Sciences and the College of Science to just let people know what we are and what we're doing, and also to the schools. So I'm with SBES, so they've heard from me a lot, and Vet Med. We're also representing UCD as a member of the Irish Green Labs Network, and the Earth Institute is actually signed up as affiliate to that as well. And we're rolling out initiatives through the Wet Labs Forum. So we have a small subgroup called the Wet Labs Forum. I keep going to do that. Now, so I'm just going to very briefly talk about some of the things that are going on. So we've initiated polystyrene bulk waste collection. So what we found was there was a lot of really good things already going on in UCD. But by coming together as a group, we've been able to share experiences, and we've been able to develop ways together to take things forward, which has been really useful. So this bulk polystyrene waste was already being carried out, recycling was being carried out by the NVRL, but we've been able to roll it out now more across the university. And nitrile glove recycling as well. That's also, I think it was piloted by you guys. but it's now rolling out in VET and it's rolling out in the SBS teaching labs, where we're actually being able to divert our nitrile gloves away from general waste and get them recycled. And finally, always good to have a few plans. So going forward, what we would love to do if everything went well. We'd like to put in sustainability training for incoming researchers. So when people start in a lab, they will be part of their inductions into the lab will be in sustainability. And that's already starting in some areas. We'd like to get some metrics for energy savings across the different research areas. And Bryan, again, will talk about some of that. We'd like to continue to expand our network. So one of the areas that we don't actually have any people from is workshop-based research. So if anybody here knows anybody who is working in workshop-based research, so engineering, physics, earth sciences, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to secure institutional support and resources for the initiative. And again, working with the VP for Sustainability and the Sustainability Officer, that's been brilliant. Develop UCD resources for sustainability and research. And last but not least, a small plug. So UCD Green Week 2024, we are running a lab plastics workshop for recycling lab plastics. So there's an awful lot of plastics that we could potentially use in a recycling stream for something else within UCD. So we're going to have a workshop to develop that, and we are doing that in collaboration with Precious Plastics and the Innovation Academy. And now I'm going to hand over to Bryan, and he can tell you all about his lab stuff.
Hello, everyone. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about kind of will overlap with what Gwyneth just spoke about, but it's kind of more of a deep dive into the kind of specifics, I guess, the trials and tribulations, but also some of the more rewarding stuff, how to actually kind of implement some, I guess, change in your lab. So there's about 20 of us divided between Kevin and Connor, Tanya Narancic, and also Bioplastic, which is the spin-off company that I work with. And for my green lab, I think we got about 20 people to fill out questionnaire. And as you can see here, they break it down into fume hoods, waste reduction, solid waste reduction and recycling, plug load, large equipment, cold storage, water, and purchasing or procurement. And these are essentially just the scores we got from that. Kind of everything is ranging between 30 and 60% odd. So obviously there's lots of room for improvement. And it does take probably the guts of 2 or 3 hours to fill out this questionnaire. So it's kind of, it took us all a few goes to get it complete, but it's a good baseline to kind of work off and gives you good indication of where you need to go. So this work is mostly, now I must say I have to thank Reese, James and Manuel for going through this. So this is our solid waste audit, so which was done in the summer of 2022. So as I'm sure lots of you might be aware, like there's a lot of waste needs to be autoclaved. And you can see in the bottom right picture here, that's just kind of like a typical bag that's ready to be autoclaved, as it's like actually like coming out of the bin itself, as you can see. But so Reese, Manuel, and James actually before we used to just get the bags, put them together, and then put them in the autoclave and bring them down to the waste. But instead of doing this, the guys actually before that they were auditing the each and every bag, and they audited a total of 18 bags, and they actually set a whole section of the room with scales and the whole lot to break down the composition of the autoclave, the waste that's going to be autoclaved. So we're currently working across 3 labs at the end of the hall here, like 3 big enough, quite big labs, and so they got a total of 10 bags in the Biorbit lab, which is probably our busiest lab, and then 3 from the Biocatalyst lab, and then 5 from the fermenter room. And they found the average bin weighed about 5.5 kilos. So it's quite substantial, considering that we might be going through 3 or 4, maybe even sometimes 5 of these bags a week. So as you can see here, the breakdown, it's mostly plastic. Plastic film, and then gloves make up a decent proportion. colors maybe aren't as distinguishable as you want them to be, but and then also paper. So then to break it down further, like to break down the actual, so the average plastic per bag was 3.5 kilos across those 18 bags. And it was found that, so we work a lot with bacteria. I should have said this again, but we all work with PHAs, which is just a biodegradable plastic, which is kind of usually made from bacterial fermentation processes. So because of that, you have a lot of agar plates, and you also have a lot of bench bags that are full of like just tips and so on. So when they broke that down, they found out, yeah, of course, the agar plates made up the bulk of the weight and the quantity, because they kind of just have that inherent weight, and also a lot of tubes and PET tips and bench and filters and syringes. So then Reese broke this down per lab. So from the Bioorbic lab, the biggest sample size, as I said before, it was kind of 5.5 kilos per bag, and then it was 4.6 kilos of that was plastic waste. So obviously, as a lab that's working in PHAs, which is biodegradable plastics, and you're producing so much waste, you kind of want to change that. So and then the biocatalyst lab, just a further breakdown where they found the bags were slightly lighter, but plastic waste made up a significant portion of that again. And once again, just the further breakdown of that plastic waste, and once again, agar plates and bench bags and so on make up significant proportions. So, and he did the same for the fermenter room, but I think the fermenter room, naturally, because you have a lot of water and so on, I think paper made up a substantially more bigger proportion, and then also the gloves make up a quite a big proportion as well. So this is the kind of I guess the summaries from the solid waste audit from the summer of 2022. So lab work dictates waste composition in different rooms. So the waste differs between each lab. So maybe different labs require like a different focus. Majority of our waste is plastic, as I said there already. Where is our cardboard, polystyrene, and other recyclable waste actually going? So this is summer 2022 now. This is May 2022, or July 2022. So this is before we kind of actually made these. I'm kind of going back in time here just to kind of give you guys a view of kind of how the kind of steps went. So, and then can we get a recycling scheme in place for gloves? And so the answer to that, I guess, that was yes. And then what more can we do with this data, which I will go on to just now. So initially, straight away, we made some changes, such as we got the school was replacing the office bins with these kind of more centralized general waste and recycling bins. So that's now kind of between our labs and the office space, and using white rolls as well as blue rolls, because blue rolls are often just much more. Sometimes you just need a small bit of paper to absorb some moisture, but and the white rolls are kind of a little bit more can be a little bit more efficient with that in terms of use and waste. So reduce packaging involved with orders and replace plastic consumables with reusables. So as you can see here on the right, that's just like a typical cuvette polystyrene box that you get. So now we just order larger quantities in plastic bags, which is to the right of that. So that's just kind of reducing the polystyrene waste. And at the time, we actually didn't have a recycling scheme for that, or like a waste stream for that. So we just switched to plastic bags instead of the polystyrene boxes. And then also some things like, as you can see here, there's a spreader and an inoculation loop, which is just kind of reusable. And so I'm kind of using that instead of using plastic spreaders and plastic loops. And then also we had plans to change the current waste stream in our labs. So these are just some examples of other things we did. So we had a large general waste bag in each lab. So instead of having it as a general waste bag, we just turned it into recycling, because often recycling cardboard boxes, large plastic bottles and so on, they just take up a lot of space. So it's kind of just to make that as convenient as possible. And yes, it has made getting rid of general waste a little bit more inconvenient, but I think that's kind of the point. And then, but So because of that, then I actually put smaller, it is quite small, it's only about the size of your forearm, but at this general waste tub, which just kind of just fills up every couple of days, and then you just bring it to the general waste bag ourselves. So it's kind of just to incentivize cycling, and then make this general waste less convenient. And we also, across our 3 labs, we put up the Kimtech glove recycling scheme. So once again, you just need to make these things convenient. You need to make the disposal of gloves convenient, so that at least then eventually the habits are learned, and then off you go. And this is just a screenshot, a very small example of like procurement action we took, which isn't a huge amount, but we kind of Manuel made a file where we rated. Say sometimes you can get cardboard packed with plastic with another box, and then another box for one single vial or so on. So we kind of wanted to rate these suppliers on how ridiculous some of their packaging was. But as you can see, the last entry was June 2022. So that's a work in progress. But another things we did was, so as I said before, we had a lot of some paper waste in some labs. So, and a lot of that paper waste might have been coming just from people drying their hands and then just throwing it in the autoclave bag, or I'm not fully sure. So instead of, we had 3 areas where people can wash their hands while they're leaving the lab. So essentially I just set up these little tubs right beside it. So you put your paper towels in there, and then once or twice a week, I or somebody else in the lab will just bring it down and throw it in here. So that's why if you ever see me cursing when I find plastic in there, that's the reason. So and then this is also, I mentioned already before, but there you have your spreaders, you have your inoculation loops, these are like little just you have your wick in it, and you have your ethanol, so you're able to essentially reuse this inoculation loop and spreaders while also keeping contamination or decontaminating it through using the burners and the portable burners and the ethanol. So we also have, as Gwyneth was saying before, we have our own little temporary storage place for polystyrene collection, which then eventually will go down to the bulk waste collection. But I think somebody, I think Will Casey in our lab knows somebody who just kind of has use for these boxes. So often they'll just come and collect them, and that's even better because you're better off reusing it rather than recycling it, as we all know. And also we're starting to now we're collecting aluminium foil across our 3 labs, which are now it's now starting to kind of overflow. So just like the gloves and the polystyrene, we would like to find a waste stream for that, or an avenue for that waste stream to go to. So that was the solid waste audit. So now I'm kind of going to go into something that I kind of did myself, was looking into the energy consumption of some of our equipments. So this is just a simple, can't kind of see in the top right. So I just put it, it's like about €15 for this power meter, to just record how much the cumulative consumption, and also just the hourly average units per hour, the kilowatt hour per hour is our minus 80 degrees was consuming. So I now that I look back on that, I should have actually I was recording it manually once or twice a day, or like at the beginning, or sorry, once or twice a week at the beginning, and I'm realizing I probably should have just left that. I essentially only allowed it to be on minus 80 for like a week or so. And then I switched to minus 70 degree, from minus 80 to minus 70. But if you take this as kind of the point in which it was the consumption that it was at, and the energy consumption. So the reason why it spikes after a week or two after that is because I remember putting in a significant amount of liquid into the freezer. So that's the reason. But if you because it's manually recorded, and because just the automatic energy meters can be quite expensive, the data isn't ideal. But you can see, if you compare this point to kind of this flat line point over here, you can see it has decreased energy consumption significantly. And I think, it wasn't actually the freezer I did that on, but so it gives a decent indication that you're saving quite a significant amount of energy. And like when it said, also the lifespan of the equipment can go up as well. So we have a drying cabinet, in our lab as well, where we just place lots of times the dishwasher doesn't actually dry the stuff properly, or just there's some items that need to be dried and further. And once again, just use the energy meter, just the cheap one. And so we used to leave our driving cabinet on 24/7, and it was kind of like just didn't really feel right. So as you can see here, this is it on 24/7. And obviously there was a long weekend, so we just, that's why it's plummeted there. But then the cabinet is still on 24/7 here. And then when we switch it to on between 8 AM and 8 PM, as you can see, the consumption plummeted. And then I started, but it wasn't actually drying our stuff properly, because just the way it works, you kind of need to put your stuff in and then dry overnight, and then take it out in the morning, take the stuff out in the morning, and then the cycle continues. So we eventually switched it to on from 8 PM to 8 AM. And I think, I can't fully remember, but we did a quick calculation, and it was something like $6.5 grand to run this giant cabinet per year. So if based on this data, it's essentially, or more than half. So you're saving $3 grand or so. I'm not sure exactly the figures. We did it before, but I don't have them in hand. But so that's substantial. So this is the actions planned and taken based on the energy data. So replace the manual energy consumption readings with automated method for more accurate data analysis. So I think there was Tristan, who also comes to the wet lab sustainability meetings a lot, was looking at these, and like they're just too expensive, really. Like and then to use this to monitor different equipment under a variety conditions, such as shaking incubators. So we found that to be also too expensive, but also just some things just aren't really, when it's a working lab, it's actually just quite difficult. Sometimes there's just some things you just can't really kind of just get a full data set on. And then implement outlet timers and equipment conditions based on the above findings, which, as I showed in the previous slide, this is just that being implemented. And then those any recommendations was from a previous presentation we did. So this is just some of the examples of, as I said before, the outlet timers. I got these stickers made where it's just there's a red, yellow, and green system. So red was just never turned us off, such as a microbalance, or there's just some things that just never be turned off. And then yellow's like turn off at the end of the day. And then like if something is off like that, there's no point. You may as well actually switch it off rather than just leaving the interface on like that. As I said before, the minus 80 was reduced to minus 70, and also Tony was very good downstairs with us, where he actually put a insulation, this kind of rubber insulation around the door, the drying cabinet, and that allowed us to actually turn the cabinet all the way down, but still maintain the same drying kind of capability. So then we did about 20 of us did the assessment in May 2022. I think we got about 15 of us then did it again for the migraine lab assessment, the certificate. So we did it again and in August. And as you can see, I should have done this in the bar chart, but it'd be much easier. But as you can see, we've increased like across the board substantially on plug load, and also cold storage as I presented, and also quite extremely substantially on the waste to solid reduction. So we focused on some areas like such as water and purchasing. I just don't like few ones. Sorry, we improved upon greatly as well. But just there's some things like water is quite difficult to. There's like, instead of having a continuous water flow, let's say for something like a condenser or whatever, we have switched over to closed loop systems where it's just using a chiller and just the water. So there has been some improvement, but there's definitely more to go. And then procurement, we're kind of tied to what is available in UCD, what's the cheapest, what's coming the quickest. Just like that packaging and sustainability and stuff just kind of is, it's kind of not of a priority a lot of the time, but that's kind of big based on the system, the kind of availability that UCD has. So yeah, any questions? But and then this is just a picture yesterday of the gloves, the bag of gloves, the pallet gloves. I think there's about 17,000 gloves in there accumulated since this maybe in January last year. So that's great. That's from our lab, from Mary's practical classes, from Carlota, And then I think sorry if I'm missing a couple of others. And then just a special thanks to Michelle Rich, who actually got this. She was a postdoc here. She actually got this up and running. She was the person to kind of hound us to get the first certificate done, but we're glad we did. And then just for Reese, James, and Manuel, who who just threaded through our lab's waste for, I don't know how many, it was definitely at least a month or so anyway, if not 2 months. And then and also Jalen, Pam, and Ed as well. So for they kind of really organized the actual getting that bag and getting contacts with Kimtech to get the kind of glove recycling scheme set up. So yeah, that's me.